afternoon. Welcome you all to this Bose Colloquium. And we are really lucky to have a personality like Professor Rupamanjari Ghosh, who is an institute builder with us. And she will be sharing her experience with making or building an institute. So before that, I request our director, Professor Tumsi Shahada, to kindly introduce this.
A very good afternoon. First of all, a warm welcome to Professor Rupamanjari Ghosh to this super warm weather. She wanted to avoid May, but then it looked like June is even worse than May. But nevertheless, I do hope her talk will actually beat the heat which we are all suffering. So I've been asked to introduce her, and I think the first time I met you was in JNU. And to me, she was always known as a person whom I can identify with quantum optics. That was she was known for. And that's when I met her. And she is very much a person from this city, like me. I grew up in North Calcutta. But then she left India and went to Rochester for PhD and came back. And right after PhD, were a faculty in JNU. So that I think whoever hired, they had great insight. So she spent a long innings in JNU. She became the dean of the School of Physical Sciences. And after having a very successful innings as both experimentalist and theoreticians in the area of quantum optics, she decided to change gear and get into science administration. At some point of time, I think we also need to think about it, because until we have competent science administrator, the growth of science in the country is severely hampered. We need more and more competent people as science administrator. And she joined as vice chancellor in Shivnagar University, and I think she was the second vice chancellor. But there also she had a long innings. She had 2 terms as the vice chancellor. And she also started, I think, the School of Natural Sciences there. And many of the groundwork, although she is the second vice chancellor, she actually started initiating. And when she said today, instead of a science talk, she wants to be more a policy talk, I was very much for it, because I see many budding science administrators. And it's very good to know, what are the challenges. It's always you are at the other side, but you should actually know what are the challenges on the other side also. So, because at some point of time, possibly you will. So, with that, once again, very much.
So, thank you, Thanusri. Thank you, Rajesh. Can you hear me? Yeah. For inviting me to come. I have a long association with SNBU Center. Before it all started, there is my mama, my mom's cousin actually. But even without that, almost all the directors except maybe one, I personally knew, and sort of ends with Thanusri, who I met in JNU, and it was very nice. We had an evening at my place together, and I could see a lot of potential, and some of the things that I'll be sharing, that I thought of sharing, will find resonance on what works, what doesn't work. So sorry for not giving a quantum talk, quantum optics talk. Money can do better. Yeah. But so next time maybe there's a lot to discuss about. But yeah, I thought I'll share with you my experience as the Mr. explained. Making of a private research university, the point is, it may not be directly relevant to an institution like a Sindhu Center. You don't deal with undergraduate students, but that's the first time. In JB also, we never had undergraduate students. The first time when I was approached by Shubnada, Shubnada is the founder of HCL. I did not know him, and I was asked to do it, so I thought it's nice to share the experience of the last 10 years in that university. So this is not going to be a clean-cut policy, but lots of sharing of anecdotes maybe. Let me see how it goes. So whenever you talk about leadership in higher education, it's already a very challenging topic, because what it means to build an institution is to engage people to build a community. Institution building is equivalent to a community building. And I think that's what we have to keep in mind right now. So if I tell you, think of the army and give me one word, how would you describe an army? Most people I ask would give me this word, discipline. Think of getting a job done. The army people are extremely disciplined. You assign a job, it gets done. If I say the same thing, describe businesses with just one word, most people will say efficiency. Contrast that with your institutions. And so efficiency would mean they have a very focused target. I made a mistake of telling Mr. Narda that they're very narrow in their vision. It will be not narrow, focused. So already you get the sense of what I'm getting into. If I tell you higher education, give me one word, I don't think you'll be able to do that, because it's a very, very complex system. And why? Because you can't either think of just efficiency and discipline, mix the two and get higher education, because the basic premise of higher education is you celebrate the uniqueness of each individual in the system. Each individual is unique. The fact that we don't think alike is the strength of higher education systems. If everybody thought in a similar manner, there will be no new ideas. Shining of new ideas happen when ideas conflict. And I think, so what we're trying to do is, you encourage creative freedom, but you avoid anarchy. There's a very fine line between the two. When we allow everybody, and those individuals are not in the Himalayas, they are part of a system, right? So when you have a system, then you need some amount of, I suppose, discipline and efficiency. So you want to avoid anarchy. At the same time, the basic premise is to allow creative freedom. So immediately you get into this very complex situation. All directors, all vice chancellors, if they need it, really get into this. Because the ultimate aim, the one thing that probably if you're talking about the higher education, it's not primary education we're talking about. So it's a luxury. It's a luxury, and there is no point going for higher education unless you aim for excellence. It's not a primary right. It is the luxury of going higher education. And the aim for that is building excellence. And this is a very, very fragile community. Unless you have a very high enough median, you'll not be able to sustain the fragile peaks of excellence. And they will break down. So I think that's the first thing that we need to remember when you are dealing with higher education. Before I start, I thought I'll talk about this. This is also another new topic in Indian science scene, is philanthropy. There's a lot of private philanthropy in India, mostly in religious purposes. There's some medical charity, this, that. See, but philanthropy, the way you see it, is not something that was very known. And the way it defines it probably is, give a man a fish and you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish, I changed it to say, or form a fishery cooperative. You teach a man to fish, you feed him for a lifetime. Don't get into gender issues here, but anyway, the aim means everything. But this is what is at the heart of the difference between charity and philanthropy. Charity is like, give a man a fish, donate, feed him for that time, but then you give them a skill. That's the basic idea of philanthropy. And this is something very, very new in India, and that's something that I will talk about. So this is empowerment and self-sustainment, not just one-time giving, right? So this is in higher education is coming, and you have to be on the lookout for it. When I got into it, I started thinking, why is it needed? Why is it important? And here is the reason that I have written down, that an independent philanthropic sector can take risks. When you are government funded, like Jane was or this center is, when you are government funded, you are using taxpayers' money. So you you cannot perhaps are free to experiment to the extent that you would love, because there's always a risk involved. So if you have an independent philanthropic sector, a private sector, you can take risks and experiment towards excellence. It's something needed in a country like India, which is very unique in many ways, and massive as it is, that you all know. So this is something that I felt was necessary, and we probably could experiment. I am going to share with you the visions, the statements. I'll not give a full policy of what exactly I came up with. Now, it's of course a very difficult job because you get written from both sides. The corporate sector, though they are extremely efficient and focused in their own domains, they are new to higher education. They did not understand, and I say it with full responsibility, that what is required for a higher education is based on teaching, learning, as well as research and innovation. Research and innovation I like to call research and invention. I'll make a distinction at the time. So a new beginning, just to give you a context, because whatever I'm saying, there is an experiment that has already happened. So I'm putting it in the background, and to put the time frame, it started in 011. I joined in 012 early, and by then it was almost new. And that's an ambitious long-term initiative of the Srinagar Foundation. The background is the following. Nobody can deny this in higher education in India. Number one is, of course, everybody's talking about NEP. You hear that a lot. What does it say? I mean, it says a lot of stuff, but I've sort of picked up a few points. It talks about a holistic and multidisciplinary education. I'll focus on multidisciplinary. It talks about flexibility of subject choices and program durations. The one in the bracket, I have personal reservations about. Inclusivity, of course, all very good. Enabling lifelong learning, leveraging technology, yes, and autonomy within a regulatory framework, etc., etc. So that's context number one. It basically wanted to have a motivated, energized, and capable faculty and effective governance and leadership for higher education institutions. The aim was to create independent, self-governing institutions pursuing innovation and excellence. All very good theoretically, but what will it take is the question that I'm going to address today. Second, of course, as everybody knows, the context number two was the pandemic, and that defined what people called new normal. You're not out of it. The point I want to make is that it's not a one-time event. It's not that in 1998 happened, 2020, whatever we went through in India, but it's not a one-time event. This kind of black swan events are going to happen. And the answer is not a knee-jerk reaction. People call today's word VUCA. Probably you've heard this many times. VUCA stands for volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And I would like to say that you respond to this volatile word with your VUCA, which is vision, understanding, clarity, and agility. Now, these are not just set talks. These are qualities you are actually demanding of your leadership. So, no knee-jerk reactions were for me when I was the Vice Chancellor, and this hit us. March 16th, we went online, but it was like a band-aid. It was not really a solution to what was to be done. But one thing we ensured, Srinagar industry never lost a day, but because we never stopped thinking big. And I'm going to elaborate on these points as time. So just because there is a problem, we don't start thinking in small terms, and if you lose sight of the big picture, what is that big picture that comes next? So that's the basics. That of course in India we are very proud that we have a robust education infrastructure. But as everybody knows, we have gone through schooling in this country, gaps exist in the current Indian and global needs to higher education. I'm going to talk about it. And the thing that I'm going to say is that that's the assertion, and probably has worked, is that a university with a multidisciplinary and research-based character will address many of these issues that we are facing. So the two things that are important, both are scarce. Sustainability, everybody talks about globally sustainable means something else. But you in the private scenario, and now even the government is talking about it, talks about financial sustainability a lot. Cannot keep on pumping money into the system. Somewhere, the system should be sustainable. What they forget is you also need intellectual sustainability. And I think for me, that's much more important. Intellectual sustainability depends on good faculty, good students. A preparation of that is a challenging thing given the scale of India. And the second one is something that I'm going to touch upon again and again, is competent leadership, as Ernestine also mentioned in her opening remarks. And the way leaders are chosen in this country leave a lot to be desired. And if you look around in all the institutions, so I'm going to come back to this point. Not just competent leadership, I'll define, and throughout what I'm talking about is creative leadership. I'm going to define that. So the challenge is the Indian system is large and complicated with many layers. By that I mean you cannot just plan for the millennials. This country is 17th century coexisting with 21st. There are many layers, and that's not always a negative statement. There are many positives about the complicated system we have. So you have to address the students you have. They come from, they're not homogeneous, they come from different centuries almost. And many of us my age or slightly younger like Ernestine, they're brought up to the generation where sort of made it in spite of the system, not because of it. And that has to change. And that is something that I resolved when I was coming back from the US, that this has to change. The way we suffered, we don't want the next generation to suffer the similar way. So if 1% of us had made it, 99% were lost. So I think it has to change and probably to flip the other way around. So this is something when you resolve that at one point, well, I would not say it's without remorse, but sometimes you have to take a step to do something that ought to be done. So as I said, institution building is like community building, where people are not dissatisfied or happy, but inspired and engaged or involved. So they don't give their 100%, but they give you their 200%. And that brings me to creative leadership. What this is leadership where you think on your feet. Basically, it means that when future is blurred and the path is not immediately known, still you inspire your community with purpose of what is to be done. And that is creativity at the leadership level. I've been talking about this, and let me give it back. Before COVID, before NME, the context was already there. This is one interview I did not even know that it would be published, but Times of India published it in the center page way back in 2018. I've been talking about it even before that. So the title is what I had said at that time. The goal of higher education cannot be to mimic robots. If your industry ready today, you may be jobless tomorrow. So if machines are taking human roles, what are humans still good for? And that's an existential question. And that's something that we need to think about. All of us need to think about. It started with what people call Industry 4.0. It was disruptive because because education was lagging behind technology. So if you have a lagging education sector, then it would look like you're getting disrupted by the industry. And it led to this kind of uncertainties of future of work. Big uncertainty. The work that university graduates could do now are being done by machines. It's not just rote jobs which were automated. It was also thinking jobs because of AI. Thinking jobs are also being taken away from humans to machines. So what are humans good for? The question that I had to ask my students, or my faculty, is that will an algorithm take your job? And this is true even today. What are humans still good for? Two answers to the last question is social intelligence is far from being fully automated. Humans also at the edge of our machines in creativity. I'm going to expand on this a bit. And if you resolve that, then the mission of your higher education system, something that will be coded. So we have two parts of our brain. The left brain is very logical, and it can be coded very easily. The right part is visual and intuitive, it's not easy to code that. If you could have problems and projects that utilize the left and the right brain together, it's not going to be replaced by machines very, very quickly. So that's how we're going to get programmed. But from 4.0 now, of course, people are talking about Industry 5.0, and that it's really interaction between humans and machines. You leverage the collaboration between increasingly powerful and accurate machinery and the unique creative potential of the human being. So I think education 5.0, if I call it, should match this. And that would take care of the problem of future of work everybody's talking about. So this is something that we have to talk about. So what's the right kind of education? Education has to move, right? We need to change our focus from make in India to make by India. What I mean by that is make in India gives you a feeling of a country of factory workers, labor force. Make by India probably a country of innovators. They are not just labor force. Then from any country of factory workers to a country of innovators, from creating the labor force to producing creative leaders who will have the ability to generate innovative solutions, especially in the face of complex or changing situations. So you can well imagine such a scenario, what is the role of the leader. So if your young have this ability, they will never be jobless, because if the scenario changes, they will have the basic skill, which never goes obsolete. So what is the right kind of education that will prepare them and give them this ability? This was there pre-NEP 2020, pre-COVID. Already in 2012, I was the first dean of research and graduate studies also. So this was the thing that we have been thinking about, and I've been deeply involved in actually shaping this the first time. The curriculum is what we talk about, not just the content. In the content part, rather than talking about science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, STEM education, what we added to it is art and design. Don't take it literally. So STEM becomes STEAM. That extra A standing for everything else. That's probably the right part of your brain. So you give them, I changed one more thing that it's not official, but it's my brain. That E technology is already there. The E probably should consist of enterprise education. Even though you're for basic sciences, and all my life I've just done just that. But the idea is that today's students need some kind of enterprise education for them to understand the world around them. And I think this is an integrated STEAM approach, seems to be content we should be aiming for. And not just the content, but even the delivery of that content is important, and I'm just coming to that. I've already stated this, that in it tapping the potential of connecting the left brain to the right brain, and that can be done when you have project-based or problem-based and hands-on and more powerful purpose-based learning. This is now a new way of doing things that had to be incorporated. And these days it's fashionable to quote Sanskrit. I learned enough of Sanskrit in school. I think authenticity, I didn't say truth. Sustainability and fulfillment, that sort of becomes the ultimate goal. What do we mean by these terms that I think most of you know, but just in case, people talk about multidisciplinarity. This is kind of an additive way of looking at disciplines. You view the same subject from different discipline viewpoints. Then that leads to interactive integration of interdisciplinarity. That's the meaning of interdisciplinarity. It's a fashionable thing to do. You can't do interdisciplinary science when you're no good at anything. It seems to happen a lot. You're no good at this, no good at that, so you start doing interdisciplinarity. There's a lot of money. Interdisciplinarity, by definition of this kind, which is the true definition, means you have to be good at least two disciplines. And you can't be the Leonardo da Vinci of yesteryear. So if you can't be both, then you hire people who work and collaborate. So it's a lot of interaction that happens to be able to do interdisciplinarity, because real life problems need real life solutions that are not restricted to NCERT Chapter 7. See, so you have to really integrate and find solutions to real life problems. In SNU, I used to say that if you build a bridge would not just be mechanically sound, but you should know the economic distribution is going to cause and the environmental impact of that bridge. The second kind of thing is to know the context of the problem. When you are solving, say, why there is no water supply in a Delhi slum, and there is water supply in Fifth Avenue, New York, it's not because hydrodynamic laws are different, it's because contexts are different. So if you can't be a problem solver or an engineer, you don't know the context of your problem. Very simple. But this is never taught. You could be a very good engineer in terms of your IIT degree. If I take such an IIT student, put them in the field that I saw from this in Vice Chancellor's office, they will not be able to solve the problem because they don't simply understand the context. So I think education had to actually change. Interdisciplinary, it meant also awareness of the context. It also meant when you need solutions, you can't restrict it to one discipline that's more. So no education in silos. But what actually we are aiming to get to, I don't think India will get there, is transdisciplinarity. The meaning of this is kind of a beyond disciplines holistic creation, a study of nature combining different ideologies or philosophies. We are aiming to get there. So multidisciplinary to interdisciplinarity to transdisciplinarity is what is needed of our curriculum. And it can be done. I will not get into the details of how I implemented that, but basically that's our policy framework number one, that the entire idea of the curriculum has to be very different from whatever you are doing. And this can be actually done. The delivery part of it is what I've written here. It has to be student-centric. It's not in the radio mode, like what I'm doing. I'm speaking now, it's a monologue. And this is how teaching used to happen. It's in a delivery mode. There is a sage on the stage. That's the model of faculty. From that, it has changed to a guide by the side, because you're actually trying to do an active learning by students. By active learning, if you talk to educationists, they talk about it by constructing knowledge. You construct your own knowledge. That's a very big topic. I'm not getting into that. But essentially, it means learning by doing. And there is a saying by Confucius, which is described, I was not there, so I don't know if he actually said it, but something that says that I hear, I forget, I see, I remember, I do, and I understand. And that's the meaning. If you are just learning because somebody is lecturing the sage on the stage, then at most 10% of it you remember. It's proven. Best people remember maybe 14%. All the time you're trying to actually increase the base of that pyramid. How you can make people understand, retain more of what you're lecturing. And that happens when you see a movie, for example. When you see a movie, you remember it because you're not just lecturing like that. There's a visual effect that is created. But doing by hand, even if you make a mistake, actually you remember even the mistake you have made. And doing something is understanding. It's not end of an exam, click of this thing, and your memory is as fresh as before. That is no knowledge at all. That's no learning at all. So I think this learning by doing is something that has to be there in all our curriculum, starting from school. But essentially, these are again terms, but you're moving away from pedagogy, which was more for teaching of children, to the term that we use now is pedagogy, adult learning. Because you are in mostly adult education, but I'm talking about even undergraduate students, regular students, or school students, are like adult learners for me. They are more self-directed learners. There's self-actualization you have to talk about, and you allow the learner to control, to be more independent, and set their own goals. And that's possible because you now have technology to enable you. You can tune it to personalized training. And I think we are not doing enough. And that's something that I started doing in SNU. So there are 4 points that, again, part of that vision. The last one is a bit strange. It doesn't apply to a science center like this, but because we are multidisciplinary, we had a very good school of social science and humanities. I thought that scientists are rubbing shoulders with policymakers, it's possible to create societal impact for science-driven policymaking. This doesn't happen in India. To give you an example, the first center I opened was called Water Science and Policy. Water is going to be more expensive than platinum, right? Everybody knows. But in India, for example, we don't have a scarcity of the resource. We have a terrible management problem. So the policy is all flawed, and we actually got somebody extremely well known to do that, and started this program on water science and policy. It was a master's level one. But it was possible, as the name suggests, the scientists, engineers, and NGOs, together with government workers, were actually all teaching in there. And new insights came in there. It's possible to do that. I just give you one example, there are more. So to do that, what exactly the other thing that I wanted to say is, of course, it's a quote from Einstein, but not his physics quote. In 1921, he talked about it, replying to Thomas Edison's opinion that a college education is useless. Sounds like what we went through. He says that the value of an education in a liberal arts college, that's an American pronunciation, if they replace that to say liberal studies in a university, that would be slightly broader. So the value is not the learning of many facts, but the training of the mind to think something that cannot be learned from textbooks. This is one skill that doesn't go obsolete. There is no future of work crisis here, because what you're doing is the entire emphasis is training of the mind. In Christian terms, you do not teach students what to think, but how to think. If the context changes, they would still know how to think and solve those kind of problems. That has to be the essence of higher education, and it essentially also means that you have to be somewhere education, even not just higher education, but school onwards, have to be connected with livelihood issues. There's a lot of schemes by the government of India. I may or may not agree with all of that, but I'm saying that all of this essentially means you ask this question to some students: are you finding your dream job, or are you creating it? That's the part of innovation. And today I forgot to bring it to another talk on the same pen drive, but even in quantum computing, there's some innovative startups all over the world, from Australia to Paris to US and Canada. Some are quite famous. I mean, they actually are delivering a quantum computer. This is done by students of Institute of Optics, for example, in France. It's called Pascal. And these are new startups. It's amazing to look into it and figure it out. The evolution of that, it may not be for everybody, but those who can, actually, it's not just for the sake of commercialization, but it's really the innovation aspect of making something available or demand at the commercial level. So that's something that is very, very interesting. Don't look at it like by the examples you get here, but I think bigger, and it's actually happening. And in this country, we're probably a little bit behind it. So last year was International Year of Basic Sciences for Sustainable Development, and I wanted to put that to this institute, that you remember that two things that have become very fashionable in higher education. You'll find many institutes that claim to be liberal arts institutes. And they forget that liberal arts is incomplete without physical sciences. So you need that. There's another bunch of institutions that talk about disruptive technologies of AI, ML, VR, and so on and so forth. Now, without sciences, they will not be able to solve any problem. Technology is a good multiplier. It's an enabler, provided physical solutions are there. You can't eat AI. If there is enough food, you can figure it out how AI can actually help you multiply that. So whatever you plan to do, physical sciences, basic sciences, the value of it, I think people are not even talking about it enough. Without that, all the problems of the world cannot be solved. So there is a quote that by Peter Thiel, you can look up who it was. He is He's not a glorified character. I will not say anything about him. But anyway, this is a famous quote way back. He said, we wanted flying cars. Instead, we got 140 characters. Flying cars, yes. 140 characters refer to the length of a Twitter post at that time. So our best mind should be engaged in science and technological developments of the physical kind. Basic sciences are important and not just in improving social media algorithms. That's what we are saying. I'm not saying that you should not do it. Some people should do it, but it cannot be that nationally we forget what the policy should be. There has to be a lot of stress on science and technological developments. So, of course, you have seen the global pandemic, the solution that came out only happened because of collaboration and free science across national borders. I also believe that technology will never replace great teachers, but technology in the hands of a great teacher can be transformational. So I think one should not forget that. And what is happening now is a lot of people are using technology that is just available in the market. It's not meant for the higher education sector. But you use them because they're available. I think it's the other way. The pedagogy we wish to use should lead to the price of technology, and available technology should not dictate the pedagogy. And I think it's time that we keep saying this again and again. Because it's very important that this debate, I find, is quite meaningless. That the two kinds of courses, some can be 100% online, and some at best 70%. There are also two kinds of students. Don't forget that. Online will work well for one group. That may be their lifeline, particularly asynchronous online, but not for others. Because education is not just about getting a degree certificate. Education is much more of social interactions on campus, everything else you learn, and including COVID research, for example. So you can actually have what I call a big and total model, hybrid or blended. You can use the best of both worlds and figure it out. So this is about leveraging technology, but not becoming slaves of technology. And there are obvious advantages of using technology. And we need two kinds, and I think often we mix it up. We need digital enablers. We need people who generate, innovate, and integrate new technology. And of course, we need digital literates who use the power of technology effectively. So you need to train, and that there's more emphasis on the second type, not on the first type. So I think this is something that there has to be some clarity in our vision. So the idea should be a good university is the one that creates more knowledge than it consumes. It's a statement from somebody I would not mind. And I thought about this a lot. So a good university is the one that creates more knowledge than it consumes. The research or generation of new knowledge is really the primary aim of a university or an institute like yours. But so it's also important that there has to be a synergy between teaching learning processes and research or innovation. And I think that's something that one needs to keep in mind. Rather than innovation, I keep on switching to invention. What that I mean is be flying cars or space shuttles or healthcare or energy costs are rising. So all of these are inventions that the world is waiting for, not the social media algorithms again. So that's what I call invention and not just mere innovation, which could be fitting of specs of an existing product, and you actually get an innovation and a startup. That's not really the point. So the focus, of course, has to be the very important part of the policy vision is that the focus has to be on faculty. And I'll not get into it. I was also the first head of the Faculty Development Center. This is a very crowded slide, purposely done. I didn't want you to see this from many slides. I just put them together. But the role of the faculty has changed from being sage on the stage, guide by the side, or the middle in the middle, whatever they all mean specific things. But essentially, it's guided by this. In our, again, a quote from Einstein, not a physics one, Einstein's quote was, everybody is a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing it's stupid. In the name of fairness, this is what we do. The students are a monkey, a penguin, an elephant, a fish, a dog, whatever. For a fair selection, everybody has to take the same exam, please climb that tree. This sort of describes, it's a cartoon, but sort of describes our education system. So I think this definitely is going to be a failure because you're failing to exploit the uniqueness of each individual in your system. That's what I started with, and how do you actually handle that is point. So the next point, because today in 1 hour, of course, I cannot do justice to this entire topic, but the idea is that you also need linkages. You can't go solo. Cross learning and exposure in a multicultural environment is really necessary. But again, this is not charity. Collaboration happens when I bring something to the table and you bring something to the table that I don't have, and then we say it's based on strengths, not on weaknesses. Weaknesses lead to charity, and they're not sustainable. True collaboration happens when two strong parts complementarity comes in. So I think this is something you have to develop your strength before you can ask for collaboration. That's lacking in India quite a lot. So you have to be now again. Gone are the days when you say, "Well, I'm Stanford University and I'm great." Individual institutions cannot be standalone institutions without ignoring the ecosystem. Those days are gone, and we have to wake up to that. That it's necessary to have national, international, academic, industrial, public-private partnerships through collaboration, and that those partnerships have to be strong, equitable, and credible. And it's not just words. This is something that we created already in the institution that I had. And in all of this, when you have so many institutions coming together, the role of universities or higher education institutions is central, according to me. Who else will be able to monitor the quality? The job, the driver's seat should be given to these leading universities and institutes. They are the quality monitors. And I also used to call Shubrama University a global university. When you are global in your outlook, you should be deeply rooted in your context. Otherwise, your institution is bound to be a failure. So one part of the vision has to be the specificity of your context. You are located in Kolkata, in this part of the region. Is there anything that you're doing that connects to your context? It's very, very important. That gives you your identity. And so all our data institutions should be what I call global yet local. Okay, and that's something is a very important part of the vision. I spent a couple of minutes only talking about leadership. Peter Drucker, the management expert, no more, but basically said leadership is lifting a person's vision to high heights, the raising of a person's performance to a higher standard, the building of a personality beyond his normal limitations. So it's all about focusing on the unique individual. And leadership is actually helping you to your full potential. How? I don't know how many of you have seen this book. It's a pretty famous book by Stephen Covey, and he says that the 7 habits of highly effective people, and I've listed them in a very precise manner. I mean, basically, it says that be proactive, don't be just reactive, don't wait for something, anticipate the problem. And I'll come to that. Before a fire breaks out, I used to douse it. So nobody would give you credit because nobody knew that there was a fire that was breaking out. And that's what I mean by saying be proactive. Most of our people, we create a problem, there's a lot of Allah will have about solving it. That's not a good leadership. So you have to be proactive, take out the fire before it breaks out. It's a very deep statement here. Think about it, what I mean by it. Begin with the end in mind, which you know. Put first things first. Interdependence is about think win-win. It's not me and you, it's win-win for both. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. This is to do with your listening abilities. Are you a good listener, or do you want to always speak? And you want people to understand you, but you need to first understand your people. That's the quality of a leader. Synergize and And continual improvement is something that you have to do, sharpen the saw. You shouldn't be so busy that you forget to sharpen the saw. Your own itself. So I think it's extremely important to remember this, and I'm going to add some more. I had a list of my own, but this is a good thing that people come up with all kinds of things. Don't read all. Somebody just recently gave a lecture on saying how a good leader should be treated. These are good points. T for task-oriented, R for relationship-oriented, E for who empowers, A being authentic, and P is team builder, and so on and so forth. So all of this, when you do, this brings us to a topic, and I'm going to end it with some personal experience, maybe. But it's important that you have a quantifiable way of, if you have this vision and you're actually implementing it, how do you measure success? It's very important for all policies in this country, which never has. You never have a report card system. How do you know that when you're building a policy, the policy is successful? It should be inbuilt into the policy. If you're having a science and technology policy, put in there how do you consider the policy to be successful. So what are the metrics? So it's not that easy. So when I started doing it, certain things you could see. I'm not saying these are metrics. That the university started, I'm talking about very slowly and steadily, it started delivering results. The first inspection by the UGC was a grand success. This is actually something not to be mentioned, but it has never happened. That a report from the UGC was so glorious about a private university, it's a public document, one can see. The same year I applied for University of the Year award in Tiki, and we got it in the less than 10 years category, and so on and so forth. So we applied for setting up an Atal Incubation Center, and that was in 2017, the very first lot. The youngest institution, I walked out with the maximum money, 8.8 crores. It was a tough competition with many levels of grading, but it happened. The graduating students, of course, that's three baskets you look at your graduating students. Are they getting well placed in industry? Are they getting well placed in higher education institutes? Or are they also developing your startups? Because all three became important to track and how you are actually helping them shaping their future. With the sustainability crisis, the climate change, etc., the first step that I could do in 2020 is to get ISO certification on environment management system and occupational health and safety management system. Both are important for the UN sustainability goals. They had a 286-acre beautiful campus with a lake, etc. Migrant birds coming and all. So it is very, very important to set up the processes. And I think every institution should probably go for these certifications. We applied for the institutional evidence by the government of India, and again, the youngest university to get the status. There are only 4 private universities in this country, and Srinagar University was one. This is something I led myself, and so on and so forth. So what is the point? Point is, well, these are all disjoint things to say, I did this, I did that, and I got success. But how is it that whatever we applied for, we had success in that? Maybe one part is that, of course, you have to go for what we call accreditation, that we did anyway, and that's a must. But to measure success is an extremely difficult one, particularly if you go by the ranking system. It's crazy. It's absolutely stupid, because if you judge every institution by the same set of parameters, it's a game I can game. I can track what exactly is working, and if everybody is being judged by the same set of parameters, there is no local concept, there is no local context, and nobody would actually take risks. Because if you take risks, your right is going to fall. So essentially, you're killing what actually is a measure of success for a university by a uniform ranking system. So the very definition and assessment of educational quality and excellence needs reimagination today. Recently, I've written a blog on this as to what is to be done. Because one thing that you understand, like I said from the beginning, that higher education needs a surprise element. It's not all fit in the standard statistics or standardized test. So that's something that you keep in mind. Maybe one way out is there are several kinds of rankings. Like each institution choose the ranking you want to go for, depending on your mission and your context. And that should be allowed, and I think that's the next stage that is going to come. One short point is that I don't need to preach it to this place, but whenever you talk about financial sustainability, it becomes a very big point that you don't have enough money for research that is of just basic nature, that with no commercial values whatsoever. So it is known that there are some often unexpected benefits of abstract or futuristic research, blue sky research as we call it. And it has been a gamble that has been played all over the world with success. For example, the laser, when it was built in 1960, everybody said it was a very good in principle device. What's the use? By the time I went to the US to do my PhD, the laser was in supermarkets. You're scanning your foods with that. So it took 20, 30 years for a fundamental thing to become a marketable commodity. But for that, if you kill the fundamental thing, there will be no marketable commodity after 20 years. Something that we need to keep in mind, even when we are talking about financial sustainability, has to be built with that we need to combine the priorities of abstract knowledge generation with relevant or contextual research and innovation linked with an economic agenda. So I think you cannot really quantify everything, and we cannot shed our responsibility, because ultimately, a competent peer review process is the only way forward. You cannot objectify and put numbers against everything. This quality cannot be judged like that. So this needs complete discussion, but I don't have the time for it today. So let's skip this one. What was my aspiration? And you can always think of it. I mean, in the industry, I see that I wanted to build an intelligent institution. What is an intelligent institution? You can give your own definition. My idea was something that's an active institution, is agile, flexible, resilient, diverse, integrated, and so on and so forth. Idea was also to create the culture of the place. This culture is, when I see a student anywhere, maybe in Munich, I'm waiting at the airport and somebody comes and touches my feet saying, and I go, oh, that's a Stuttgart University product. It's something about the culture that you stamp into somebody's character that shows. And I think the basic elements that we need to look at has to be diversity and inclusivity, that there is no substitute for that. And you don't do it just because it's the right thing to do. Do it because it also makes perfect business sense to do it. There is a Harvard Business Review paper in November 2016. The title of it was something like that. It was something like this: diverse teams are smarter. It's based on corporate experiments, but it can apply to higher divisions as well. That it makes business sense to have diverse teams. I don't mean just in terms of gender, but of course gender is the main one, 50% if you want to have proportionality. And then the third thing, of course, was all of it you can do by choosing the right team, where it's not enough that, well, subject experts would look at their academic merit. As a vice chancellor, what I was interviewing every candidate for 1 hour after they've been selected, not as a physicist, but alignment of purposes, and that's extremely important. Your institution comes with certain characters, and you it's kind of stupid to hire somebody and say, I made a mistake. So when it comes to promotion, you say, you don't fit in because I made a mistake in hiring. Whose fault is that? So I think mostly nobody is a misfit for anything, but you may be a misfit depending on what is the alignment that was to be done with the institution. The institution comes with a vision, and that is something that was my job really to do. Qualities that you see in leaders is lead from the front, and you don't find it in majority of Indian institutions. You lead by example. I don't teach anybody about research. I cannot, unless I have suffered in the system by trying to do research, and I know exactly what your pain points are. Yeah, so it's a simple example, but you can go by all of that. It's not a question in this center, for example, but this is true of all vice chancellors in this country. And leaders are, of course, not coded computers, and having that right reason for using discretion is very important. Most people show power in India by saying no. You want to do something, or can't be done. That's your power. Show your power by saying yes. Something that cannot be done, you find a way to do it. That means that a leader should not be the gatekeeper, but the gateway. Of course, everything is not allowed by the rules and systems you come under. So I think this is the difference. Otherwise, you just put your rules on a computer and you don't need a leader. The computer is the leader, right? To fit in what is allowed, what's not allowed. So discretion is an important characteristic of a leader. And discretion can only come because of convictions. Human beings, good leaders, have convictions. What is right and what is wrong. If you take a wrong step, then you can still be a leader. If you don't take a step, you're not a leader. If you take the right step, you are a good leader. But if you take a wrong step, you're still a leader who made a mistake once. Okay, that's all right. If you don't take a step, you are no good occupying the leadership position. So I think this is really the heart of the matter. And I have a very long list. I erased most of it. Leader's role, as you know, is hands-on, minds-on, but more hearts-on, passion in what you wish to do. The ownership that I was talking to Anushree about, that unless you see this is your institution and you are the leader of a community, not just the facilities and people, but the community aligned by a purpose, you are actually going to be a miserable failure. So, given the unavoidable disruptions now in the future, the task is to cultivate generations of visionaries, thinkers, and academics who can change the world before it changes them. This is what I believe in, and I think higher education system actually is getting into that. I like this quote very much, and this is, I suppose, last 10 years I've been doing. Not that I did not miss my physics, but in 2017 I could do some physics, but not up to that. And I'm getting back to this now. A successful person finds the right place for himself, but a successful leader finds the right place for others. And this is really what it summarizes what I was trying to tell you today, and more for later. But I think I thank you all for taking.
Thank you, Professor Ghosh, for this very inspiring talk. Can we get some questions? Yeah.
This is to do with the very last part of the talk, where actually talking about they should not be computer coded thing. But sometimes the government also has to buy what you are writing, because sometimes the rules have been really becoming like that. If a leader really tries to put their mind, later on there are some penalty associated. So very often they have to balance this risk factor and being really a person who is like a leader.
Absolutely.
So the government has to buy whatever you are trying to preach, and someone should tell the government. So these are the things. This kind of flexibility should be given.
So you're right, but it's like hammering. Even a steel or a very concrete stone, water falls on it drip by drip, one drop at a time. After a year, you find a little dent. Now, it's not to be done by individual directors under the current theme. The fact that you are alone one ministry trying to do something, okay, supposing 100, we have 1,000 universities in this country, 1,000 people trying to say the same thing in different ways. And I have this problem, this flexibility I need. And anybody talked about self-governing institutions. Why are we forgetting that? It's the job of everybody in leadership positions to remind them what it means to have self-governing institutions. And I think, you have to be pragmatic. You cannot do something that would bring penalty to your institution. But the point is not accept it. Continuously, this is, I think, a part of the leader, not looking inside, but look outward. Don't look just inward, but look outward as to what is happening, because your role is also that of a mentor for the entire country in some way. Because the steps you take will determine its precedence to what others are going to do. So if everybody is just looking at it, because you are alone, can't really make a dent. So if that's the point, actually, one person starts making these noises, surprisingly, sometimes you would find 5 others are waking up saying, I have the same problem. And then a little change happens, then a little change happens, and so on and so forth. So it is kind of difficult, but I think more such talks should happen when these young generation people take up such positions. Hopefully they'll remember some of these. And I think that's a continuous struggle that we have to go through. But if all of us accept stupidity like the norm, then I think the fate of the country, veterinarian sciences, is gone. I mean, so you are very right. I mean, but the fact of the matter is that you are alone. It should not be that way. So a lot of our work is looking outward to do what I call advocacy. And that advocacy has to be done intelligently. So we are not put in computers. Otherwise, why do you have a human being as a director? Your discretion should be recognized. And the idea is not to always suspect people. You know, I did not write my long list. The first thing is institutions build on trust. You know, in Ramakrishna, I had this thing, look. বিশ্বাস করে ঠকা ভালো, অবিশ্বাস করে ঠকাচ্ছে. So it's almost like that. You know? I mean, why do I waste my time by not trusting you? That cost me much more. If I am proven wrong because I trusted you, okay, I'll leave with that. Maybe one or two expensive. So our entire system is built on mistrust. Nobody trusts you. It's your institution. No, aren't you looking at what is best for your institution? So with the philanthropic funder and I think the reason it could rise so well because there is a resonance. I'm not agreeing to do something. That means I have the interest of the institution in mind, and I see something that you may not be seeing. I'm saying that it's not the way. So I think that private place gave me the freedom that I never had in the government sector, honestly. And you're right. But it has to change because the government sector is the big one. And I don't see the private shining or the government shining. They need each other.
Yes.
Right. So I think that has to be kept in mind. But it's a very good question. It's a real pain point right now.
So, thank you, Sir.
Thank you.